What's up, YouTube? I'm going to give you a bonus episode of the Troponin episodes here with just me. We've had some sound issues in the last couple episodes, and so I thought maybe I'd give a bonus episode to see if I get something you guys would like. Don't really have any topics planned, but I think the first thing I'm going to do is show you how an example of how I set up a diet for some of my clients. And so I'm actually recording my screen here. Let me move this out. I can figure this out. So here's a example of, I guess, a template that you get if you're one of my clients. And so you'll see here, it explains, how the diet works, how you set it up for different types of training, and then you get a food list. We have our use freely, use sparingly. It's not comprehensive. It's basically a low FODMAP diet. But let's set up a diet for, let's say, a super heavyweight bodybuilder. Let's say we got a guy who competes at about 240, he's about 290, maybe in the off season, and he's looking to add size. And let's do a rebound diet right after contest prep. Everyone likes, that's the best time of the year. It's where you get the best growth. So I don't have any exact formulas. I used to years ago, and I think I still have some spreadsheets that would, have actual formulas in here. And actually, I could show you real quick. I know my eBooks do. If anyone's thought about maybe buying one of my eBooks, here is massive. And so you'll see here, you guys can't see these, I don't think, if you buy the book, because this is all locked. Maybe you can, I don't know. But you'll see the formulas here. They're really not that amazing, but let's see how this compares actually. So we'll say, we have we'll just do 6 foot tall, 72-inch male bodybuilder. Let's say he weighs 200 and we said 290 and peak out. Let's say it's just right after the show, and he's 245 and he's about 5% body fat. And so that's his lean body mass. And so this is the diet that this program would output. This is massive, a carb cycling approach. And you can see how much you'd be expected to eat. And when I do these formulas have to work for everyone, from the 110-pound female to a 290-pound male bodybuilder. And so they're, like all things, you get to the outliers, they don't quite get as accurate, and it's probably skewed more towards the larger bodybuilders, because that's typically who I work with and who, and I competed as a super heavyweight. So they're probably a little more accurate on that end. But this should work all the way down to, take a 60-inch female with 125 pounds body weight and 16% body fat. And you see it, yeah, it's a little higher calories than I would typically recommend, probably personally. But you see it's skewed, it gets a little off when you get to the extremes. But let's go back to more where the diet was meant for people, my general clientele. And so you see the diet output here. This is the macro list. Added fat here, that's only the added fat. That doesn't count the fat that's in the protein sources or in the carb sources. And I've explained that before. My protein sources are all within, the ones I recommend are all within the natural variation of the food themselves, meaning that if, you get 96 foreground beef, it's not synthesized in a lab. It's not under pharmaceutical conditions. It's a butcher looking for the lean cuts of the cow and trimming the fat off the steaks and then grinding it up. So it gets as lean as it can. But you take a very lean grass-fed cow and, a butcher that gets all the fat off, and you might get 2.5 grams of fat per 25 grams of protein in 96 foreground beef. Well, typically chicken's lower fat, but every chicken isn't the exact same body fat. Every chicken, just like every human, has a whole life, and some of them eat more grain than others, some of them do more activity than others. So you get a particular fatty hen who didn't move much, who was a gluttonous pig, that might have 3.5 grams of fat per 25 grams of protein. So even though the food label, which takes, at some point they did some bomb calorimetry to get the rough average of chicken breast in some area of the country when they did the thing back in the 90s to make the FDA food labels. They said whatever it was, it's 1.5, 2 or 2.5 grams of fat per 25 grams of protein. But you can get a fatty chicken that's higher in fat than a lean cut of beef that's 96.4 ground beef. And so trying to measure those things to the half of a gram, just because your food label says that, it doesn't help anything. It just adds inaccuracy. You think you're adding precision, but you're losing accuracy. And so we try to avoid that with what I do. So as long as you're using my use freely sources, I know that. And now, obviously, if you ate nothing but one source versus the other, it would add up to a difference. But people typically do, and we've talked about this on the podcast also, is people eat the same foods every day. They do their egg whites and oatmeal for breakfast. Meal 2, they like to have extra lean ground beef. Meal 3 on a low day, they have flank steak. Meal 3 on a medium day, they have chicken breast. People stick to the same foods, and a good athlete will. They'll find, it won't be the exact same foods every day, but it's not like you're rotating 700 foods through the diet. You're rotating, most people will eat, 3 or 4 different sources of protein for the most part. On rare occasion, they might add a fish or something, but they'll eat the same 3 or 4 and that sources, and 60% of the time they'll eat this source, 20% of the time they'll eat another source, 15% of the time they'll eat a third source, and then 5% of the time they'll have the final source. So that the fact that there's the consistency in the food choices people make, and the fact that the variation of the protein is greater than within each source is greater than the variation between the sources. They're really, you don't get any improved accuracy by counting those macros. You can, but you'll see over time that what you're counting is an estimation anyway. So I won't belabor the point. But you get the diet here, and then you go to your meal examples here, and it outputs. You can see so actually what I do is I take a source, a protein source, and I normalize it for the macronutrients. So I normalize for a gram of protein. And normalization just means you bring it to 1 so that you can multiply it by however many numbers you need. And you can, if you've had a math class, you know how to do that. So it's normalized for 1 gram of protein, and then here I just take the protein that's in the meal at each day, meal 1 on a medium day, and it tells you need 195.3 grams of chicken breast to get 60 grams of protein. And this is for my clients, especially. A lot of them, it's hard to explain this properly in the diet plan, and so I never know if people are understanding what these sheets are. But it outputs a full meal plan, all your meals for the week. Oh, forgot to add the round there. And everything's rounded again to the level of accuracy you need. Like with protein, we round it right to the gram. With fats, we'll round it to the first decimal place. There's another one, missed rounding. And then for down here, on high days, I do 50% sugar carbs, 50% complex carbs. And so we'll round it a little higher there also, a little more accurate. And so that's how it's set up. Now I'll show you, let's actually set one up, how I would probably set it up for, like I said, the super heavyweight bodybuilder. You never know. And the thing is, when you send a diet to someone, the first diet you send isn't magic. This is me estimating. Like I said, I used to have formulas 20 years ago. I don't anymore. I've done this so many times. You do several hundred diets. You get pretty close with it by, I have a questionnaire that people fill out, and so I kind of know what their rough daily energy expenditure is going to be, what their training style is, and then with like the more well-known people, you kind of already know them. You've seen them train and things. But the diet should always be a jumping off point. And, a good coach, that's why you do check-ins. Anyone who says that they can just, look at a few pictures and ask you how hard you train and output an exact diet for you that's going to work, they're lying. You get pretty close, but the real this is the easy part. The real work is done in adjusting these as the person goes, as the client goes, to keep them progressing. And so we're rebounding, so we're going to keep carbs fairly low on low day because I really want to push them on the medium and high days. And this should be about right. And my fats, kind of oddly, are always like 7, 10, or 14 grams. And why would I do that? Well, fat sources tend to be in those increments. A half of an avocado is about 10 grams, so it usually ends up being an easy measurement. A tablespoon of natural peanut butter is usually 7 grams of fat. A tablespoon of olive oil or macadamia nut oil is about 14 grams of fat. And so it's not that I want, when right after I like harp on it, there's only so accurate you can be. Those numbers are just to give round measurements, because I could say 15 grams of fat, but you're not going to be able to measure 15 grams of fat. You can measure, a tablespoon of olive oil, that's 14 grams. You could try to get that into some kind of container and weigh it and see exactly the gram weight, which would be not much more than 14 grams because olive oil is pretty much pure fat. But this just helps out. Another little trick that improves long-term accuracy by removing the inaccuracies of trying to be too accurate. So we're going to push them pretty hard on carbs around training. And so you see like the pre-workout meal, inter-workout, post-workout meal, that's so you can move the workouts to any time of day you train. So if you train at 5:30 p.m., you might move them here. If you train in the middle of the day, you move them here. You train in the morning, you have them at the beginning of the day. And then the rest of the meals you just eat in numerical order around the workout meals. I set that up. I used to ask people what time of day they train and write the plan for that time of day and tell them meal times, which is great if you always only train at that time of day. But then you find, you think, an advanced lifter would be comfortable adjusting just without being told how to do it. But, newer people, if they worked out at 5 every day and then for some reason they have to work out at 2, they don't know how they should adjust their meals if they've only been given a meal plan. So this allows them to do that. So let's see, I'm gonna push the high days pretty high after a show. So these calories might be a little bit low, but the high days we're really gonna push. And this would be the day we'd use insulin. So we're at 1,000 grams of carbs that day. We're gonna have 2 of them a week. And I'm going to have it, and this is kind of standard what I do. Now, if you do push-pull legs, and you might have 2 leg days a week, this says a leg day and a back day per week, meaning you only get 2 of them per week. I prefer that they're on a leg and a back day or both leg days, basically just your 2 heaviest days of the week as long as they're non-consecutive. So we're depleted a little bit going into them and we can put to use all those carbs. And of course, I always include an intra-workout shake. And we have articles up on Team Troponin about intra-workout and how important it is. And it is important. The science has shown over and over again that it increases muscle protein synthesis, it improves training endurance, improves training intensity, increases the weights you can use later into a workout, improves recovery, all those things that are beneficial. Now, however, if you're eating like a bodybuilder 6 times a day, 365 days a year, it's not going to be the difference maker. It's you want every little bit you can get, but the important thing is those 6 meals a day. The intra-workout shake is nice icing on the top, but that is not the diet, and people put too much emphasis on it, and I probably don't help that with the fact that I've talked about intra-workout for 15 years now and the importance of it. But I do use it, and I put it in every diet, but it's realize the importance of it. And now here's the part that a lot of people are confused by or want to skip or think I'm not trying to lose fat. The contest is over, and I don't like HIIT cardio. So why am I doing this? Well, we don't do HIIT cardio like 15 seconds on, 45 seconds off, it's not like you're training for some Olympic event. The way I have clients do HIIT cardio is basically 1 minute hard, 1 minute light. 1 minute hard, that's not HIIT at all. I know. What we're doing it for is to improve your training, to improve your metabolism, increase your appetite, but most importantly, improve your training. And 1 minute is about the length of time of a really hard, long set of squats, a set of 20 on squats, a set of 10 or 12 on deadlifts. Those movements where, as you get stronger, the risk that your muscles are no longer the failure point. When you reach failure, your lungs are the failure point, especially at larger body weights. And that can really negatively affect growth. If you can squat 425 for 20, but your lungs are only capable of keeping up 365 for 20, you're losing gains there, and this will improve that. And all the perma bulkers are going to see this and say, I don't want to do cardio, I'm trying to gain weight. And I'll say 2 examples. One would be Costa Redemption. Ronnie Coleman is 800-pound squat. I believe that exact same day after the leg workout, I think it's like 2 or 3 hours later, just randomly in the middle of the day, he goes and does 45 minutes on the step mill in the off season on his leg day. And Ronnie had bigger legs than anyone. Anyone out there, saying they're afraid they're going to lose leg size. Another example would be Kai Green. He does a step mill for I think 15 minutes before every workout. And Kai Green has probably the freakiest overall leg dimensions of any human that's ever walked the earth. Cardio will not make you lose size. Doing 2 hours a day on zero carbs and zero fat could make you lose size. And that's what people think, because they do cardio when they're also starving themselves and they do 2 hours of cardio. That doesn't mean that a little bit of work. Really, the idea that working out and that exercising is gonna be detrimental to your muscle size or muscle growth is really kind of a funny thing when you think about it. And only bodybuilders would come up with something that sounds that dumb. It's like like I don't want to play too much basketball. I might get bad at basketball. Or if I don't know, coach, if I practice my swing too many times, I'm afraid I won't be able to hit a baseball, or I won't be as good at baseball. It's only a bodybuilder thing, but that's why that's in there. And now, so you can see how it outputs. It reads those values from low day macro calculations, which then meal one low day macro calculations will take those numbers from this references the diet plan, the correct cell, puts those numbers in there. So we get 60 grams of protein in meal one. You can see 60 grams of protein could come from 195 grams of chicken breast, 230 grams of 95.5 ground beef. And I always talk about 96.4, but when I wrote this, 95.5 is what was available at the store I went to most of the time. So it's just written for that. And this data is just pulled from the internet. Like I said, it was some general chicken breast nutrition website that had a list of every macro, and I have a spreadsheet of all the macros also for a much wider range of foods. Then I just normalize it for the protein source, shrimp, and then protein shakes, eggs with yolk. And then when I do these are harder to implement in the spreadsheet because I have people, typically my ratio of egg whites to egg yolks is 6 whites to every yolk, and that puts the total fat at roughly the same as 95.5 ground beef, maybe a little higher in fat, but that's the ratio I usually recommend. We do the same for carb sources. This time you can see it's normalized for the carbohydrates and not the protein because we aren't carbs here. And then we do the same with fats and then also vegetables. And then if I ever, with my clients, if I'm putting carbohydrates below 25 grams in a meal, like 15 grams, I'm not going to try to have you get those from complex carb sources. What I would recommend at that point, and usually what I do is 10 grams of fat or carbs in that meal. It's basically a zero carb meal. If someone's dieting and I have them at 10 grams of carbs per meal, it's really a no carb meal. I just don't want them eating nothing but chicken. I want something else in their stomach. So we give them a vegetable source up to that carb amount, and that would be kind of the limit for that carb amount. And I mean, that's it. That's how I set up the diets. I don't know if anyone's ever interested in that, but anyone who's worked with me has seen this spreadsheet. And this is really, when I reference the diet, to me, this is my diet plan, the macros, because I know what foods to eat. And if you don't know that you should be eating chicken breast, chicken tenderloin, turkey, ground beef, skinny beef, and eating white rice, cream of rice, potatoes, sweet potatoes, and if you don't know that those are the foods you're supposed to be eating, we got bigger problems. But a lot of people like the meal examples, and so I added this several years ago so that people could get a full meal plan. I don't change this much with clients because I want them to learn, and you have a full list here anyways. You can see you have a meal plan for all these different sources that's automatically updated. When I change, so you can see I'll change. We'll just do that. Go to low day now, and you'll see 50, 50, 50, 50, 0. And all these foods change. So now the amount of chicken it takes to get your protein requirements on low days now is 163 grams. If we, and you can see it changed here also, all automatically, which is, I think, interesting. But if we bump to 65 grams, you can see now they would need 211 grams of chicken, and then these or 212 grams. These are already updated also. So if you're a client of mine and you want to be a coach yourself, you can kind of see and play with the numbers here, or you can see also if you got the diet massive. And so let's see what difference we got. So this plan is the one I wrote. It's real quick, you know. I didn't put a lot of thought into it, so I mean, these are all just very round numbers. With a real client, there'd be a lot more work involved. But just to get kind of a rough idea, I think I had 60 here too, so we can keep it true to form. So you can see how close we got to what the massive spreadsheet recommends. Pretty close. I gave this calculated that you need a little bit more carbs and fat, but that's also because I think we said we were going to push a little harder on the carbs. Yeah, not too much, pretty close here also. But the high day is what I said I was going to push harder on because we're in the rebound, and so you can see I did push harder than the massive plan would have. Well, I think that, I mean, that's, you know, I totally unplanned. I didn't even think about opening this till I opened it, but you can see just off the cuff, thinking of a bodybuilder of a certain size, what I would kind of, my thought process would be, knowing nothing else about the athlete, what their training is. I didn't add anything about whether they're a high volume trainer or low volume, how tall they were. But this, for a 6 foot, 245 pound stage weight bodybuilder, this is the kind of the food this plan would have recommended, and this is what I would have actually done. And you see they're pretty close. So if you can't work with me, or you can't work with my nutritionist Thomas, and you want a diet, and the nice thing with this will update as you grow, only as you need it too. So right now, say you gain 5 pounds of muscle, that's really not enough for a total diet revamp. So you can see the diet hasn't changed much. But now let's say you had a banging rebound, you blew up, maybe that's a little too much fat gain in that short time, but you blew up there. Now you see the diet has completely been rewritten. Now you're a massive 290 pound dude with abs. You had the most amazing rebound ever. Now we need to feed that larger size, and you can see how the diet has adjusted. But the diet will only adjust if you need to. So now if, say, you don't drink enough water one day, oh, it did. Yeah. It's hard to know in exactly, the formulas can only be so good, but that must have been right on the borderline. Let's see if 287 changes it. Okay, so 285 to 287 in it, but then the calculation, let's see, it's 289. When's the limit? Okay, 288. Yeah, so apparently my formulas, their edge case was the 288 to 289. But in general, these numbers will only change as you've changed, your body mass has changed enough to require a change. If you're 150 pounds at 10%, this is what I'd have you be eating. If you're 152 pounds, you probably don't need that much change in food. Some of the things changed a little bit. But this plan will work all the way up. So you could start as a 150 pound kid in high school, 6 foot string bean. Actually, it's probably not a string bean in high school, but 152 pound stud wrestler. You love training, you start working out. 2 years later, you're 175 pounds at 8%. Now that's the diet you're on. 2 years later, you're 205 pounds at 8%. That's the diet you're on. Now you're in your mid-20s, do your first cycle. You get to 225 at maybe 11%. Now that's the diet you would be on. And then a few years down the road, you're a 290-pound monster at 11%, and that's the diet you'd be on. And then now we got you back at 65 grams. Oh, yeah, because of the body fat. So you can see the change in body fat. If you were a little bit leaner at 290, it would think you needed a bit more protein because you have a little bit higher lean body mass. And that's all done in the massive spreadsheet. Now, that you can't edit these. If you get the plan, I don't know if I can. I think I can, and maybe they're not. On the one that you actually buy when you download the ebook, these should be the only cells you can change. I guess you could change your name too, but it doesn't matter. And you can see that got you pretty close to the same diet here as we came up with on my own. So I don't know if that's interesting at all to you or not, but I thought, given the issues with sound lately, I thought maybe I'd do a little special podcast and show you. I am using high quality equipment. I've got a 4K webcam. Sometimes I use my phone at 4K, 60 frames per second. I got a Shure SMB7 mic here. It's the best mic you can get. Expensive boom arm. I got the Cloudlifter mic activator. I got a Focusrite. You can't see it. The cords will rip. Focusrite. Whole EQ audio system. I don't know why when we record with the Troponin episodes, why the sound doesn't ever seem to work. We use the same platform we use for the bodybuilding business where the sound doesn't have issues. So we're working on it. It could be that I need to record, as is Dave and Danny do the recording and do the uploading. because I live out in the middle of nowhere. I live out on a little private lake in the Michiganist of Michigan, Richland, Michigan, just kind of a little north of Kalamazoo. With you wouldn't think these places like this still existed in 2022, but with absolutely terrible internet that I pay an absurd amount of money for multiple internets. I have a special internet just for my office, and but it's still so slow that uploading these videos in 1080p or 4K is nearly impossible. It takes a full day, and so we have them record so that it can upload faster. We can get you content quicker. But if the situations continue, if the issues continue, then maybe we'll move to something like this, and we'll just have to do fewer releases. But thanks for joining me on this one-off just me episode of the Troponin episodes. And remember, like, subscribe, turn on notifications, tell your friends about Team Troponin, tell your mom about Team Troponin, draw it on an overpass in John Deere green paint. Whatever you got to do, get to the website and keep your comments coming so we can know what topics you want us to cover. Thanks.